This is War Map. Fighting in the Zaporizhia region. On the Zaporizhia front, heavy fighting continues amid attempts by Russian units to launch an offensive on the western flank. The Russian Defense Ministry announced Russian forces secured the populated area of Novobaykovskoe, and earlier it was also reported about the liberation of Lukyanovskoe on the approaches to it. Without objective control footage, this raises certain doubts. In Lukyanovskoe, for example, it was not possible to secure a position at the time of the announcement. There are indications of a counterattack by Ukrainian units on the positions of Russian units near the road 0080205 in the area of Stepnogorsk. This confirms earlier reports of a small advance of the Russian armed forces to the north of the city. The situation on the entire western flank remains difficult. A significant part of Primorskoye is a gray zone, without a clear front line and stable control. On the central section, there are no significant changes. The AFU retains control over Novodanilovka and most of Malaya Tokmachka, and Belogori is still predominantly in a gray zone, largely due to its location in a lowland. Despite the ambiguity of recent announcements about liberations, at least a local intensification of offensive actions is evident. However, an assault on Orakov is unlikely to take place in the near future. The village on the approaches was able to be held by the Ukrainian armed forces, and logistics still need to be cut off. It is likely that this is the purpose of the advance to the northwest from Stepnogorsk. Meanwhile, on the eastern sector, the foothold near Gaichur is gradually expanding. Despite a series of counterattacks by the AFU in the area of Priluki, the Russian armed forces maintain the initiative and are gradually bypassing the village from the west. According to objective control footage, units of the Vostok military group are launching attacks from the direction of Dobropilia. Recently, they managed to occupy at least part of the northern massif of the Bairaki Botanical Reserve, as well as to establish themselves in a nearby strongpoint. This will allow them to take under fire control the supply routes of Ukrainian formations in Priluki, as well as to reach a large strongpoint west of Varvarovka. Control over it is necessary to form the southern facade of the foothold on the left bank of the Gaichur and to prevent possible counterattacks from the nearby forest. From here, in the future, the Russian armed forces will be able to advance further west to the section of the railway between Ternovatoye and Zheleznodorozhnoye. This will create prerequisites for an even greater expansion of the semi-encirclement of the Ukrainian armed forces grouping west of Gulyai Pole. The battles for Pleshchevka. The situation in the vicinity of Konstantinovka remains difficult. The western outskirts of Chasov Yar and the banks of the Kleban-Bik Reservoir remain a zone of battles, where assault groups of both sides are operating. Some time ago, footage appeared on the internet indicating the presence of the armed forces of Ukraine in Pleshchevka. The AFU uses the forest strips west of the populated area for counterattacks, although it does not have stable control over them. Therefore, it is quite possible that individual infantry groups still manage to break into the village from time to time to take shelter in the basements. However, they are not able to advance further to Nelepovka through Krivoy Torets in the conditions of a drone-saturated sky. And as a result of a lack of supplies and regular drone strikes, they also quickly lose their combat capability, remaining in shelters for weeks. For a long time, there has been practically no front line in this direction. The front line is a chain of often isolated strong points, between which a gray zone remains. Due to such a sparse order, both sides often use the tactic of infiltration, leading infantry groups into the rear of the defenders. Therefore, the Russian armed forces will be able to finally secure the vicinity of Pleshkevka from AFU counterattacks only after the complete occupation of the higher northern bank of the Kleban-Bik Reservoir. The situation in Kupiansk continues to be complicated. The entire city has become a gray zone, with scattered group of both Russian and Ukrainian troops continuing to exchange fire from urban positions. Random videos continue to be published from both sides, showing soldiers raising flags on both outskirts and attempting to plant flags inside the city. RAF assault troops are melting snow due to a lack of water, while being under enemy fire in Kupiansk. Presumably, RAF soldiers are in a semi-encirclement and are holding positions in the city hospital. The armed forces of Ukraine tried to install a flag on the building of the Kupiansk administration with a drone. It was blown up by RAF fighters with a drone. Until next update.